Before we move on with this video, I just wanted to inform you guys that this video is sponsored by Activision, which is the publisher of Call of Duty Mobile. So thank you, Activision, for helping support this video. And if you guys want to download Call of Duty Mobile, there will be a link down below. I'm sure most of you guys are already playing it, already having a great time. But yeah, let's go ahead and go on with the video. Hey, what is going on, guys? It is Hawksness here, back with another Call of Duty Mobile video. Now, today what we're going to be talking about is the best assault rifle in COD Mobile, and more specifically, we're going to be talking about what the best assault rifle is for you. Now, let's go ahead and get right into it. So when comparing assault rifles, one of the most important things to keep in mind is the recoil of the weapon. So I actually found a way to measure recoil inside the game, and I was able to put it into a graphics. And right now what you're seeing is just me shooting the gun one time, 30 bullets. And then after this, I'll show you what it looks like when I did it a couple times, just so we could get a more consistent idea of how the recoil could look. Now, if you look closely at these recoil patterns, what you're going to notice is that the gun with the most recoil by far is the AK-47, and the gun with the least is the M16. Now, the M16 is actually a burst weapon, which means you shoot, you press the shoot button, it'll shoot 3 bullets, and then it'll stop for a little bit, and then it'll shoot 3 bullets again. So the reason that the recoil is so low, because in that time that the gun isn't shooting, the recoil just goes back down to the very bottom, and then you just shoot and it does another little bit of recoil and then goes back down. So we're not going to worry about the M16 a whole lot because that's not a full auto gun. So the AK-117 goes a little bit side to side, but it does seem like it's the lowest recoil from top to bottom. And then the M4 is basically just a straight up and down line, but it does go a little bit higher than the AK-117. And then it seems like the most unique recoil is the Type 25 because it looks like it bounces from left to right a lot. It's very side to side, back and forth, whereas if you look at like the BK-57, the recoil just kind of slowly goes to the right. It goes left slowly and then to the right slowly. Now, if you haven't played mobile games or really any shooter games in general, the easiest way to control recoil is if it's straight up and down, because then all you have to do to control the recoil is you just pull your aim down. So if you're playing a mobile game, all you do is as you're shooting, just drag your thumb or your aiming finger down, and then you'll compensate for the recoil. But obviously the harder to control recoil is recoil that goes side to side, because side to side is very unpredictable, especially if you look at the Type 25, like that's going to be very hard to predict. Is it left? Is it right? Things like that. Okay, now the next graphic that you're seeing is when I did the exact same thing as last time, but I did it 3 times for each gun. So now you're seeing 3 different spray patterns for each gun. Now, what we're going to notice from this is basically the same thing. The AK-47 is still the highest. The M4 is still a very tight group. The M16 didn't change at all because, once again, when it shoots those 3 shots, that's the recoil, because then after that, it just goes back down and it repeats the same thing. But looking at this, it seems like the ASM-10 does have a pretty solid. It doesn't go very side to side, which is good. That'll make that gun easy to control. The AK-117 and the M4 are also very tight spreads. And then the Type 25, you can tell, is just kind of all over the place. And then similar to the BK-57. So what we learned by this is that the recoil is not consistent, and you're not able to teach yourself to learn a specific recoil pattern. But the more you practice the gun, the more you'll learn how to pull down. But the side-to-side recoil is much harder to master. Okay, now what you're seeing is the 10-shot recoil pattern. So most of the time when you're shooting someone, it only takes, honestly, like 3 to 10 shots to kill them. Most of the time you won't spray your entire mag at somebody. So what you're looking at now is a little bit more of a realistic thing. It's only going to show you 10 shots of recoil as opposed to 30. Now, obviously, the M16 is going to be super low for the reasons I explained before, but the guns that stick out to me as being the hardest to control and maybe the easiest to control is the Type 25. Definitely seems like one of the hardest. The AK-47 naturally is one of the hardest. The first few bullets on the AK-47 seem pretty straight. As you can see, they just kind of go straight up. Then after that, it gets a lot harder to control. BK-57 seems pretty tough, and then the guns that are a little bit easier are the M4 and then ASM-10. The AK-117, you can see, is probably one of the lowest recoils. It doesn't go very high, but it does go to the side horizontally a little bit. Now, to actually put a number behind these recoils and try to figure out what the worst to best is by a certain number, what I did is I placed a box over the recoil from left to right and top to bottom, and then I just figured out the area of the box, and that's the numbers you see on your screen right now. Now, I also did this when I did the 30 shots earlier, so here you can actually see ratings of the guns based on their recoil. So they're just ranked from worst to best. So AK-47 is 20.6 and 51 for its 10 shot and 30 shot respectively. And then the best gun is M16 with 3.5 for both 10 shot and 30 shot. Now, one thing I want to point out, because this gun is going to be a gun I talk about a lot, is the Type 25. Now, if you notice on the 30 shot rating side, the Type 25 actually has a pretty good recoil. It's right in the middle at 23.5 rating. But if you look over at the 10 shot rating, it has a rating of 11, which is the second highest out of the ARs. Now, the reason for this is because the first few shots on the Type 25 are very sporadic and very hard to control. but the more you spray, a little bit more tighter it becomes, and the more the other guns kind of get to the same level of recoil. Another gun I want to talk about is the AK-117. As you can tell from the 10 shot and the 30 shot rating, the AK-117 is on the bottom half of the recoil of guns on both sides, which means it does very well with its recoil. Alright, so now that we have a good idea of the recoil patterns in COD Mobile, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next part. Alright, so the next section is a little bit more focused on the fire rate of the guns and the damage of the guns. So essentially what I did with the help of Hot, his Twitter is at HotIsOP, an ex-teammate that I had on Cloud9, we actually found the damages and the bullets per second of every gun. Now, if you don't understand what that means, don't worry, let me quickly explain. So in COD Mobile, every single player has 100 HP. So basically what Hot and I did is we used each gun and shot each other, and we found out how much of our HP, so how much of our 100 HP, the gun did. And we found out two things. And what we learned is that ARs, and specifically ARs, so not like SMGs or snipers or things like that, they either do a headshot damage or they do body damage. So basically what I mean is, like, if I shot someone in the toe or I shot them in the chest, it would do the exact same amount of damage. There is no difference between the body except the head. The head is the only place where you do more damage. So to find bullets per second or the fire rate, I basically shot an entire 30 round magazine in each gun, and then I divided that by how many bullets I actually shot, which was 30, and then I got a bullets per second rating, which basically will just rank the fastest shooting guns to the slowest shooting guns. Then to get the DPS rating, which is basically damage per second, all I had to do was multiply the total damage by the bullets per second, and then I was able to get a DPS rating. And now what you're looking at is everything that I just said, so you can see the damage rating, the bullets per second rating, and the DPS rating. And what we're going to notice is that the highest damage AR is the AK-47 and the lowest is the M4. Now that might be kind of surprising to a lot of people, because a lot of people that start out the game actually get the M4. That's the very first weapon you get, and they're like, wow, this gun is really good. And the reason you think that is because it has very low recoil, but in terms of the damage, it's really not that great. And also, if you look at the bullets per second rating, it's right in the middle. It's not bad, but it's not great. It's just overall an okay gun. It has bad damage, it has good fire rate, and it has really good recoil. So when you multiply these damage and BPS ratings, you get a damage per second of 254, which is the second lowest. So it's not good at all, but once again, it has low recoil, so it does feel pretty nice. So the AK-47 has the highest damage, but also one of the lowest bullets per second, and as we know, it also has one of the worst recoils, but once again, it has very good damage. So what this means is its damage per second comes out to 301, which is on the upper side of things. It's the third highest damage per second, so it is very solid, but once again, it is pretty hard to control. Another thing I'll be talking about soon is the range of guns. I won't go super in depth with the range because that's a very hard thing to talk about, but that is something to keep in mind when looking at this. That is one more thing we'll talk about when we actually look at the best guns. Now let's go ahead and look at the Type 25. Now the Type 25 has the highest damage per second of all the ARs, and I think it actually might have the highest inside the game at 360 damage per second. Now, as you remember before, the recoil is pretty high. It's not the worst, so it is something we're going to talk about more soon, but it does have 360 DPS, which is heads and tails above every other AR. The next highest DPS is the AK-117, and if you guys remember, the AK-117 has very, very low recoil, and it also has the second highest DPS. So we're going to talk about that more soon, but as you can tell, the AK-117 is going to make up a pretty good gun. And then smack dab in the middle is going to be the LK-24 and the BK-57, and the lowest DPS is the M16. Now, I just want to say that M16 is across the entire 30 bullets. If you want to look at how much damage per second just one burst does, so just those 3 bullets going tut-tut-tut, you can see at the very bottom that the M16 mid burst does 30 damage, which is really good, and 13.04 bullets per second, which would put it at the second highest, and that equates to 391 DPS, which would be the highest in the game. But that's only one burst, so it's not the entire 30 rounds, and there is a long break in between each burst. So both those stats aren't fully accurate, and I'll kind of explain why soon. And the next very important but also very small aspect of guns is the headshot multiplier. To basically explain the headshot multiplier, if I shoot you in the body and I do 10 damage, and then I shoot you in the head and I do 14 damage, that means it does 1.4 times as much, because 10 times 1.4 is 14 damage. So the headshot multiplier for the M16 is actually 1.4. The rest of the ARs are 1.2 except the Type 25. Now what I suspect that is that during the beta, the devs saw that the Type 25 is being used by a ton of people and very good, and they're like, okay, it's really good, we need to nerf it a little bit, so what should we do? And they put the headshot multiplier down to 1.1. I think either that or the gun is a lot like an SMG, and a lot of SMGs have a headshot multiplier of 1.1, and because it's kind of SMG like, they decided to make the headshot multiplier 1.1 like SMGs. So yeah, the best headshot multiplier is M16, worst is Type 25, and then the rest are all tied at 1.2. Alright, so the guns that I'm about to talk about, I will include how to get each one in terms of what level you have to be, because almost every gun is obtainable just by leveling, but there is ways to get guns sooner than that by doing certain challenges, going to the store and just buying it, stuff like that. So always pay attention to those things, as well as obviously just leveling up and getting the guns. Alright, so now to the part you guys have all been waiting for, my conclusion on the best ARs in the game. Alright, so the best rushing AR is the Type 25. Now, by now, you guys probably know a ton about the Type 25, you know, basically all the cons, that it has high and random horizontal recoil, the headshot multiplier is very low, and also one thing that you probably don't know is that the range isn't great. It's not bad, but it's not great. The pros are that it's the best in class damage per second and fire rate by far, and then the proper attachments can actually mitigate the high recoil. Now, what I mean by the proper attachments can mitigate high recoil is that if you put on a foregrip, a laser sight, and a red dot sight, or any sight that you want, but I prefer the red dot, the recoil is reduced significantly, and here's what that looks like. So as you can tell, adding a red dot, laser, and grip makes the recoil much more similar to that of a AK-117. So a little bit more info. The gun actually has a reload speed of 2, which is very good, by the way. If you don't know how good that is, very good. Magazine size of 30, which is the standard across most ARs except for 1. And then the extended mag is 38. The ADS speed is 0.2, which is pretty average for basically all ARs. And then the quick draw ADS speed is 0.1 seconds. Okay, so some tips out for the gun are don't full auto at very high ranges. What you want to be doing is kind of bursting the gun, because if you start full autoing, it's going to be very hard to control, very random. No matter how good you are, it's going to go all over the place. All right, so my next tip is avoid hip firing unless you're very close. Now, when I say very close, I'm talking maybe within 5 to 10 meters. If you have a laser sight, you can get a little bit more range out of hip firing, but generally you want to try to ADS, because the spread on this gun is pretty high. And the next one is the aim for the hip or chest. Now, the reason I say this is because, once again, the gun kicks up very hard, so if you aim for the head, you're probably going to go off the target. And then also, the headshot multiplier isn't great, so there's no real point in hitting the head. So generally, hitting right around like the crotch and hip and chest area is where you're going to have the most luck with this gun. Alright, and the next one is the most balanced AR. And for this, we have the AK-117. So some cons of this gun. So it actually takes 5 or more body shots to kill someone, and most ARs, apart from the M4 and the AK-117, can kill people in 4 shots. So the AK-117 is one of the only guns that will take 5 body shots to kill. Another thing is the range isn't great, although it is better than some of the other guns, and it is more controllable at longer ranges. So it's not the worst con, but again, the range isn't amazing. Some pros are it has the second best DPS and fire rate in the AR class. It is extremely accurate, and it works well in almost all situations. It is very, very versatile. So some tips I have for this gun is aim for the chest. Now, the reason I say this is because if the gun starts kicking up, you will get that headshot multiplier if you hit the head, so you don't really have to aim for the crotch. So aiming for the chest will be actually good, because then you can potentially get a little bit more headshots. You don't want to aim for the head, obviously, because the headshot multiplier isn't amazing. You can if you need to, but I honestly would recommend kind of aiming for the chest area. Go for mid-range fights. That's where this gun is at the very best, because up close, again, it'll take 5 or more body shots to kill someone, whereas guns like the AK and even the Type 25 can kill in 4 body shots up close. So mid-range is where you're going to start to get more of an advantage. And then very long range is not great, because you're probably going to get sniped and things like that. It works, again, very versatile, so you can do that. And then another thing is it's generally easy to use. You're gonna get a hold of this gun pretty quick. It's basically a better M4. Alright, and in terms of attachments, I would recommend the quick draw, just because that's good on basically any AR. This gun doesn't need it for any reason. It's just ARs typically work very well with the quick draw. It's gonna help you aim in and shoot people a lot quicker. And then another good thing is fast mag. I would recommend that just because this gun does have a little bit slower reload speed. Alright, the next one is the most high skill AR. Now, this is probably one of the hardest guns to use, but also has one of the highest rewards. Now, this is the AK-47. Now, the cons of this, as you know, extremely high vertical recoil and slowest fire rate in class, besides obviously the M16. Now, the pros are it also has the best class damage and also the best range. So this gun is going to be very good if you know how to use it. You can get I think at very long ranges, you can actually 4-shot somebody, whereas most ARs, you're going to have to get like 5, 6 shots, maybe even 7 on some of them, like the M4. It also has a great damage per second. I think it was ranked the 3rd highest, so it's also very good with damage per second. And it can kill in 3 shots. It's one of the only ARs that can actually kill in 3 shots. Now, granted, you're going to have to hit a headshot for it to kill in 3 shots, but it is one of the only ARs that can do that. More info, the reload speed 2.28, which is general, and then the rest of the stats we've talked about. It's the exact same across most ARs. So some tips: don't full auto at very high ranges. If you're full autoing at high ranges, you're not gonna have a good time, okay? Now, even if you can control it very well, it gets difficult. Now, obviously, as you get better with it, maybe you can start doing this a little bit more, but at like very far ranges, you want to be tapping to fire, maybe bursting a little bit. As you guys remember, the first few shots on the AK are actually very accurate. They just go straight up, but they don't go side to side. So the first few shots you might get away with like bursting it, but don't full auto it at far. It's not going to work. Also, avoid hip firing unless you're very close. This is just kind of general with high recoil guns. And then aim for the hip or chest. The reason I say this is because you don't really want to aim for the neck or the high chest. You want to aim for it more like lower regions, because the gun kicks very hard. So the lower you aim on the body as it kicks, you'll still be hitting them. So I'd even recommend maybe aiming for the legs, to be honest. One of the essential perks for this is going to be toughness. The reason you want this is to reduce the recoil when you're getting shot. This thing already kicks hard enough as is. You don't need it kicking harder if you're getting shot. And then foregrip and laser sight obviously are going to do you a big favor in reducing recoil. I was actually going to talk about the M16, but honestly, that gun is trash. Do not use it. That's it. Go on. Next gun. Now, the last gun is the honorable mention AR. There's still obviously the other ARs that I didn't talk about too much, but those are guns I just generally wouldn't really use because there's better versions of them. But the honorable mention AR is the BK-57. Now, the con is that the recoil is weird. Now, I highlighted weird in green because it's weird in a good way and a bad way. And then otherwise, stat-wise, it is average. It doesn't do anything great. It doesn't shoot super fast. It doesn't have a ton of damage. It's just kind of in the middle. It's a solid gun. The pros are the recoil typically doesn't bounce side to side like the Type 25. It generally kind of picks one direction and kind of goes that way from my testing. So it makes recoil control a little bit easier. Very solid DPS. I think it was like the 4th highest, so it's in the upper half. It's the biggest mag size. Now, this is a big one. It actually has a 35 round mag if you look at the more info, and then that can actually go up to 43. So there's no need for an extended or quick draw mag. Most of the time, you can actually get away with putting on other attachments. And when I said weird recoil, it's because it is kind of easy to master. The more you use it, the more you understand it. But when you're first using it, it might seem like it's going one way really hard. But the more you learn how to get recoil control at pulling the opposite direction of the recoil, the better you're going to get with it. Alright, and once again, the more info I kind of just covered. It does have a bigger mag size, so you don't really need the quick draw or extended. Tips are don't full auto at very high ranges. As you get better, you can do this, but this is in general. Just don't really want to do it with guns that kind of have more recoil. Avoid hip firing unless you're very close. This is pretty general. And then aim for the hip or chest. These are just kind of general tips for ARs. And then toughness, foregrip, and laser sight are all attachments that you're going to want to have on this gun, just so you can reduce your recoil, help out your hip firing, and then, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Alright, so that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed. I am also kind of sick, so my voice is raspy, so sorry if I was ever hard to understand. I think it was pretty good, though. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to drop a like and a sub, because I do Call of Duty mobile content basically daily. I try to get really good videos, like tutorials like these that are highly edited, a lot of effort put into it, around twice a week, and then I also do some gameplay here and there. So if you guys want to see stuff like that, improve your skills, make sure to check out old videos too, because I have like a best controls video, best sensitivity. This will be best gun. I'll be doing more like best SMG, best LMG, best sniper, stuff like that in the future. So if you want to see that, make sure to drop a like and a sub. All my social medias are right here if you want to get a hold of me. Also, my hand cam's whack. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'm out, guys. Peace.